Ladies, life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes with joy, sometimes with heartbreak, and sometimes with both, tangled so tightly together that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. I'm 55 years old now, and when I look back at that young girl I used to be, I almost want to laugh and cry because she had no idea what was coming. So let me take you back. Back to the days when I thought love was simple, trust was forever, and betrayal. Well, betrayal was something that happened to other people, not me. I grew up in a little town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, where Friday nights meant high school football, and where your business was never really your own. We had one grocery store, one movie theater. My daddy worked long hours at the factory, and Mama, oh, Mama was the heart of our home. She taught me to cook biscuits from scratch, to iron a shirt crisp enough to impress anyone, and most importantly, to always carry myself with dignity, she used to say. Sweetheart, you never let this world tell you who you are. You stand tall, even if your knees are shaking. I didn't understand those words back then, but oh, how I would come to live by them. I was 16 when I met Michael Dot. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't the prettiest girl in town. I was shy, bookish, the kind of girl who liked writing poems in the margins of her notebooks. But when Michael looked at me, Lord, it felt like the whole world stopped spinning for a second. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with that easy smile that made every girl turn her head. And somehow, for reasons I'll never fully understand, he chose me. Ladies, have you ever had that moment? That dizzy, heart-racing moment when a boy you never thought would notice you suddenly does. And you think, this is it. This is what love feels like. That was me. That was us. Our love grew in little ways at first. Walking home from school together, sharing milkshakes at the diner where the jukebox never seemed to stop playing. Elvis, talking on the phone until Mama would yell from the kitchen, hang that thing up before the bill ruins us. And oh, the letters. Do you remember those days before text messages, before emails, when boys would actually write? Michael wrote me little notes in class. Folded triangles of notebook paper that said things like, "You're the prettiest girl in the room." I kept them all tucked away in a shoebox under my bed. That shoebox became my treasure chest. My proof that love was real. By the time I turned 20, I thought I knew the path of my life. Michael had taken me to the county fair one summer night. We rode the Ferris wheel, and as the car rocked at the very top, he pulled out a tiny velvet box. "Marry me," he whispered, eyes shining under the carnival lights. My heart nearly burst right out of my chest. I said yes, of course. What else could I say? And ladies, let me tell you, for the first time in my life, I believed in happily ever after. I pictured a white dress, a little house with a porch swing, children running barefoot in the yard. I thought betrayal belonged to soap operas and scandalous magazines. But I was wrong. So wrong now. Let me tell you about Karen. She was my best friend, my sister in everything but blood. We grew up side by side, braided each other's hair, shared secrets under the covers at sleepovers. When Michael proposed, she was the first person I called. She squealed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Oh, honey, this is perfect. You're living the dream." And I believed her. I trusted her. Because why wouldn't I? Best friends don't betray each other, right? Soft pause, heavy sigh. But ladies, sometimes the knife doesn't come from the stranger in the dark. Sometimes it comes from the person standing right next to you, the one holding your hand. But that's not today's chapter. No, today's chapter is still the sweet beginning. You see, in those days, life felt golden. My mornings were filled with planning wedding colors and dreaming about honeymoons. My afternoons were spent working part-time at the bakery downtown, saving every penny for my new life with Michael. The old ladies who came in for coffee used to wink and say, "Enjoy this time, honey." These are the days you'll never forget. They were right. I'll never forget them. Not because they were perfect, but because they were the last days I was truly innocent. The last days before I learned just how cruel life can be. But let me paint you the picture, 'cause I want you to see it to feel it the way I did. It was spring. The dogwoods were blooming. The air smelled like fresh rain. And everything inside me felt alive. Michael and I would go for long drives with the windows rolled down, the radio blaring. He'd reach over, take my hand, and squeeze it tight as if to say, "You're mine, forever." We'd talk about the little house we wanted to buy, about names for our future kids, about where we'd travel someday. And I believed every word. I built my whole future on those promises, ladies. Have you ever done that? Built your dreams on someone else's words? It's a dangerous thing, isn't it? Because words can vanish. But oh, how young hearts cling to them. I remember one night in particular. We were sitting on the hood of his car, parked out near the old river bridge. The stars were scattered like diamonds, and Michael said, "Rachel, no matter what happens, I'll always love you. You're the only one. It's the only one." Those words became my anchor, my safety, my truth. Little did I know, they were already unraveling. Looking back now, I see the signs. The way he sometimes seemed distracted. The way Karen's smile lingered a little too long when she was around him. But at 20, I was blind. Love made me blind. And so I stepped forward with joy, with trust, with my whole fragile heart open wide. That was my beginning, my fairy tale start. And ladies, if you're listening right now, I want you to remember your own beginning. Remember how it felt to be young, to believe in love without question. Remember the butterflies, the late-night phone calls? The way your heart raced just hearing his name. Because before I tell you the betrayal, before I tell you how everything shattered, you need to know just how high the mountain was, so that when I fell, you'll understand the depth of the valley. Soft pause and, oh my friends, the valley was darker than I ever imagined, but that's the next chapter. So if you're still with me, stay tuned, because what comes next will shake you. It shook me to my core, and it was the beginning of a journey I never expected, one that would lead me through heartbreak, through revenge, through redemption, and finally, into the arms of real love. But for now, let me close this chapter with this. Love is beautiful. Trust is fragile. And the beginning is always sweeter than you realize. If you've ever felt those butterflies, leave me a comment and tell me about your first love. And if you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because your story matters too, and I want to hear it. This is only the beginning. And I want you to hear this part of my story with your heart wide open. Because betrayal doesn't always come like a thunderstorm. Sometimes it comes like a whisper, a shadow creeping in while you're still, basking in the sunlight. It started small, little things that didn't make sense at the time, but that I now look back on with such clarity. Michael working late more often. Karen showing up at my house when I wasn't there, saying she was just dropping by. The way conversations would fall silent when I walked into the room. But I was blind. I was so full of trust in him, in her, case, in us, that I brushed every red flag aside, because when you love someone, when you believe in someone, you don't go looking for lies. You go looking for excuses. One Saturday afternoon, I went to the bridal shop with Mama to try on dresses. Oh, I was glowing that day, twirling in lace and satin, imagining myself walking down the aisle. Karen was supposed to meet us there. She called last minute with some excuse about being too tired. I didn't think twice. She was my best friend, my maid of honor. Why would I suspect anything? Ladies, have you ever trusted someone so completely that suspicion never even crossed your mind? That was me. Naive, innocent, wide open, but betrayal has a way of slipping through the cracks. I remember the night it all came crashing down. I had worked late at the bakery, covered in flour and sugar dust, exhausted but happy. I decided to surprise Michael, take him dinner, maybe spend the evening together. I packed up a box of his favorite pastries, still warm from the oven, and drove across town to his apartment. The lights were on. His car was in the driveway. My heart lifted as I climbed the steps, balancing the box in one hand. And then I heard it, laughter. A woman's laughter. And not just any laugh. Karen's laugh. At first I thought, surely not. Surely I'm mistaken. But then I heard his voice, low, intimate, and the sound of glass. Clinking against glass, my hands trembled. The box slipped, pastries tumbling across the porch, but I didn't even notice. My whole world tilted in that instant. I knocked once, twice, my heart pounding so hard. I thought it might crack my ribs. The door opened, and there they were, Michael and Karen, her hair tousled, his shirt half-dash buttoned, and the look on their faces. Lord, I'll never forget it. Shock, guilt, and then, worst of all, defiance. For a long second, none of us spoke. Finally, Karen stammered, "Rachel, it's not what it looks like." But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. Michael stepped forward, reaching for me, saying my name like it could undo the knife in my chest. "Rachel, wait, let me explain." Explain. What could he possibly explain? The love of my life and my best friend, together behind my back while I was out planning our wedding. My throat closed up. Tears blurred my vision, and in that moment all I could do was whisper, "How could you? I wish I could tell you," I screamed. I wish I could say I slammed the door in their faces, cursed them out, demanded answers. But the truth, I froze, because betrayal doesn't just hurt. It stuns, it paralyzes. It knocks the breath right out of your lungs. I turned and walked away, down the steps, into the night, leaving the pastries scattered like broken dreams behind me. Ladies, have you ever had your heart ripped out so suddenly that you didn't even feel it at first? Like you're floating outside your own body, watching your life collapse, but you can't seem to wake yourself up. That was me. I drove home in silence, parked the car, walked into my childhood bedroom, the same one with faded posters and a shoebox full of love letters under the bed. And then I collapsed on the floor. I sobbed until my throat was raw, until my pillow was soaked, until there was nothing left in me but emptiness. Because it wasn't just Michael I lost that night, it was Karen too. The two people I trusted most had chosen each other over me, and that, ladies, is a pain unlike any other. The days that followed were a blur. Whispers in town spread fast. You know how small communities are. One neighbor hears something, and before you know it, the whole town is buzzing. Some pitied me. Some judged me. Some avoided me altogether, as if betrayal were contagious. And me, I could barely get out of bed. Food had no taste. The future I had built in my mind, the wedding, the house, the children, all of it went up in smoke. I remember Mama sitting on the edge of my bed, stroking my hair, whispering, "Baby, you're stronger than this. You'll get through it." But I didn't believe her. Not then, because in those first few weeks, I didn't want to be strong. I wanted my life back. I wanted him back. Even as angry as I was, even as shattered as I felt, there was still a part of me clinging desperately to the dream. Ladies, have you ever begged for scraps of a love that was already dead? That was me. Ashamed, broken, desperate. One night, about a month later, Keys showed up at my door. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice shaky. He said he made a mistake. Said he still loved me. Said Karen meant nothing. And for a split second, I almost let him in. Because the heart doesn't care about logic. It doesn't care about pride. It only knows what it wants. But then I saw something in his eyes. Not love, not regret, but fear. Fear of losing his backup plan. And in that instant, something in me shifted. I realized he didn't come back because he loved me. He came back because he didn't want to be alone. And I was worth more than that, so I closed the door, and with it, I closed the chapter of Michael and Karen. But don't think for a second that I bounced back overnight. No, ladies. Heartbreak leaves scars. For months, I carried their betrayal like a stone in my chest. I questioned everything. My worth, my judgment, even my future. And I'll be honest, I hated them. I wanted them to hurt like I hurt. But little did I know, life has a way of handling that on its own, because while I was stumbling in the dark trying to find my footing, their so-called love story was already beginning to rot from the inside out. And when I finally saw it, when I finally realized the tables had turned, It was sweeter than any revenge I could have planned. But that, my friends, is a story for another chapter. So let me leave you with this. If you've ever been betrayed by a partner, by a friend, by someone you thought you could trust, know this. The pain feels unbearable, I know, but it will not kill you. It will break you wide open, yes? But sometimes breaking is the only way to rebuild stronger. I didn't know it then, but the girl who sobbed on her bedroom floor that night, she was about to become a woman forged in fire, and the wisdom she gained, that wisdom would one day save her life. So stay with me, because in Chapter 3, I'll show you what it means to fall and why sometimes. The fall is the very beginning of the rise, and if you're watching this right now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Leave your story in the comments. Let's heal together, and don't forget to subscribe because my story isn't finished and neither is yours. Ladies, after betrayal comes the fall. And believe me, when I fell, I didn't just stumble. I plummeted. The morning after closing the door on Michael, I thought I'd feel stronger, empowered even. Like in those movies where the heroine kicks the man out and instantly struts into her new life. But the truth, real life isn't a movie. I woke up feeling hollow. My body ached from crying. My spirit was drained, and the bed beside me empty. That emptiness, it screamed louder than words. The first few weeks were brutal. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My hands shook when I tried to work at the bakery. Customers noticed. Some whispered. Some asked too many questions. Others stopped coming altogether, as if heartbreak were a disease they might catch. Bills piled up, rent, electricity, supplies for the shop. And with fewer customers, money slipped through my fingers like sand. Ladies, have you ever had that moment when life knocks you down? And then, just to make sure you stay there, it stomps on you again? That was me. One night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of overdue bills, my head in my hands. The clock ticked loud on the wall. The silence pressed in around me, and I thought, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm not strong enough. That's the dangerous whisper of despair. And let me tell you, it's a voice that will eat you alive if you let it. Mama tried. She'd come by with groceries, sit with me, remind me of who I was. She'd say, "Baby girl, you've been through worse. You'll get through this too." But I didn't believe her. Not then, because betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your confidence, your faith, your sense of who you are. I was 27 years old at the time, and I felt 90 old. Worn, used up before my life had even begun. And let's not forget Karen Knott. She paraded herself around town with Michael like nothing had happened. Hand in hand, smiling, acting like the queen who'd won the prize. Every time I saw them, it felt like salt rubbed into an open wound. And people talked. Poor Rachel, guess he didn't love her enough. Karen always was the prettier one. Their whispers cut deeper than knives. One evening, I walked into the grocery store, and there they were, Michael and Karen, in the produce aisle. He glanced at me, guilt flickering in his eyes. She smirked, held his arm tighter, and in that moment, I nearly broke. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run, but instead I held my head high, walked right past them, and finished my shopping with tears burning behind my eyes. And ladies, let me tell you something I didn't know then, but I know now. Sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes strength is quiet. It's keeping your dignity when the world is daring you to shatter. But the fall didn't stop there. The bakery, my dream, my livelihood started slipping through my fingers. Customers chose bigger stores. Suppliers raised prices. My hands, once steady with frosting and dough, trembled from stress. One morning, I burned a whole batch of bread because I was crying so hard I didn't hear the timer. I sank to the floor of that kitchen, surrounded by smoke and ruined loaves, and whispered, "God, why me? Haven't I suffered enough?" And here's the raw truth. Ladies, I even thought about giving up. Yes? Giving up. There was a night when the loneliness pressed so heavy on my chest that I thought, what if I just let go? What if I just slip away quietly and stop hurting? But then I thought of Mama, of the bakery we built together, of the girl I used to be, full of fire and dreams, and I realized I couldn't let betrayal be the end of me. Still, the fall dragged on. Months went by in gray. Birthdays, holidays, all felt empty. Friends stopped calling. They didn't know what to say, or maybe my sadness scared them off. I learned what true loneliness feels like. It's not the absence of people. It's the absence of belonging, and I felt like I belonged nowhere. One particularly bad day was walking home from the shop when I passed by a park. Children were playing. A couple was laughing, holding hands on a bench, and I broke down right there on the sidewalk because all I could think was, that should have been me. That should have been my life. Have you ever done that, ladies? Stood there comparing your life to others, measuring your worth against someone else's smile. If you have, then you know it's poison, and I drank it every day. But here's where things start to shift, because even in the fall, even in the deepest pit of despair, there are little sparks. Tiny glimmers of light you don't notice at first. For me, it was an old notebook. I found it while cleaning out a drawer one sleepless night. Inside were recipes I had scribbled years ago, pies, cookies, cakes, each one filled with my handwriting. Little notes about Mama's tips or my own experiments. And for the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt possibility. The next morning, I baked again. Not for customers, not for money, just for me, just for the joy of it. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. The dough rose golden in the oven. And when I took that first bite, warm, sweet, comforting, I felt a spark inside me. It wasn't much, just a flicker, but it was enough to remind me I'm still here, and that, my friends, is where I want to pause this chapter. Because the fall isn't just about breaking. It's about finding those small sparks, the things that remind you that you are still alive, still worthy, still capable of more. So if you're watching this right now, and you're in your own fall, whether from betrayal, loss, or heartbreak, I want you to look for your spark. It might be a hobby, a memory, a dream you tucked away long ago. Whatever it is, let it remind you that your story isn't finished. Because in chapter 4, we rise. And oh, ladies, that rise is going to be powerful. If you're with me, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because your story matters too. And together, we're going to rise stronger. Ladies, the fall nearly broke me. But you know what they say? It's the cracks where the light gets in. And in those cracks, something new began to grow. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to rise. The first step was small. Baking again. Remember that cinnamon bread I told you about? That one little spark. Well, I clung to it. Every morning, I'd get up before dawn, put on my apron, and bake. Not because I had customers, not because I had bills to pay, but because the act of creating, of mixing, kneading, shaping, smelling the sweetness in the oven reminded me that I was still alive. It was therapy, ladies. Therapy in butter and flour. And little by little, I noticed something. I smiled again. I hummed as I worked. I remembered who I was before betrayal tried to define me. Then came step 2, survival. The bakery was on the verge of closing. Bills stacked high. I could have given up. But instead, I got creative. I started making smaller batches. I experimented with new recipes, healthier breads, sugar-free cakes, little twists that made people curious. And then I tried something bold. I took a basket of my pastries to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. Just me, a folding table, and a smile I had to force onto my face. At first, nobody came. People passed me by going to the bigger stalls, the flashier vendors, but then a woman stopped. She tried a sample. Her eyes lit up. She bought 2 loaves. By the end of the day, I had sold out. And let me tell you, that feeling, that tiny victory, was like oxygen to a drowning woman. From there, I hustled. I networked. I made flyers, handed out samples, talked to anyone who would listen. And guess what? People started coming. They weren't just buying bread, they were coming to me. They wanted my story, my warmth, my care. Because here's the truth, ladies, skills can pay the bills. But heart builds a life. And I poured my heart into every loaf, every pie, every conversation. Meanwhile, Michael and Karen, oh, their shiny little romance started to crack. The gossip in town turned. People whispered that he was drinking more, that she was jealous and controlling, that the picture-perfect couple wasn't so perfect after all. And I won't lie, a part of me enjoyed hearing it. A part of me thought, good, let them taste the bitterness they served me. But here's what surprised me. When I really looked at them, saw them fighting in public, saw the emptiness in his eyes, the sharpness in hers, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt free, because their downfall wasn't my victory. My rise was my victory. And ladies, let me pause right here to say something to you. If you're sitting there thinking your enemies need to fall for you to rise, hear me now. They don't. Your rise isn't about them. It's about you. Let go of the bitterness. Let go of the scorekeeping. The best revenge is not watching them fail. The best revenge is watching yourself shine. But rising isn't just about work. It's about soul. So I started tending to mine. I took walks in the park, sat under the oak tree Mama used to take me to as a girl. I journaled, wrote down every hurt, every betrayal, every lie. And then one day, I burned those pages. I lit them up in the fireplace, watched the smoke curl, and whispered, "You don't own me anymore." And in that moment, I swear I felt 20 pounds lighter. The turning point came one evening at the farmer's market. An older gentleman stopped at my booth. He bought a loaf of bread, then came back the next week. And the next we talked. Nothing serious. Just small conversations about recipes, about life. He told me he had lost his wife years ago, that he knew the taste of grief, the sting of betrayal. And there it was, connection, not romance. Not yet, but the simple reminder that I wasn't alone. Now, ladies, I want to be very honest here. The rise isn't a straight line. I had setbacks, days when I cried again, nights when loneliness crept back in, bills that still scared me. But the difference was this. I kept moving. Even on the bad days, I showed up. I baked. I sold. I lived, and with every step, I got stronger. 1 year after the betrayal, I stood in my bakery, not the one I almost lost, but a new one. Small but thriving, and I looked around at the shelves filled with bread. The customers lined up, the laughter and chatter filling the room. And I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, ladies. Let me say this from the bottom of my heart. Life will knock you down. It will betray you, break you, and bury you in pain. But you are not finished there. You can rise. Not because the people who hurt you deserve to see you strong, but because you deserve to be strong. Your wisdom, your skills, your scars, they are not your shame. They are your survival kit. And trust me, one day, you'll look back at the rubble of what broke you and realize it was the foundation of your new life. So as I close this chapter, I'll say this. If you're watching this and you're in your fall, hold on. The rise is coming. And if you're already in your rise, tell me in the comments, what's one thing that pulled you out of the dark? I want to know. And of course, hit subscribe, because I'll share how that man at the market, well, let's just say he became more than a customer. And oh, that's when life really surprised me. Ladies, let me ask you something. After betrayal, after heartbreak, after years of feeling like you're not enough, how do you ever let love in again? That was my question. And that question walked right up to my market table, wearing a gentle smile and holding out a few crumpled bills for a loaf of bread. His name was Daniel. The first time I noticed him, he was quiet. Just another customer, really. Tall, a little weathered, like life had tossed him around too. His eyes carried something I recognized. He bought one loaf, said thank you, walked away. I didn't think much of it. But the next Saturday he came back, bought 2 loaves, asked if I had ever considered making raisin bread. The week after that, he came back again, bought 3. And this time, he lingered. We talked about baking, about family, about little things. He told me he was a widower. His wife had passed from cancer years earlier. He raised his kids, worked hard, and now with his children grown, he was learning what it meant to live again. And ladies, hearing his story, something in me softened. Now let me be clear, I wasn't looking for love. After what I had been through with Michael and Karen, love was the last thing on my mind. I built walls, high, thick walls. But Daniel, it didn't come at me like a storm. It came like a gentle rain, patient, steady, quiet. Every week he showed up, sometimes with questions about bread, sometimes with stories about his day. And slowly, those walls of mine started to crack. One evening, after closing my booth at the farmer's market, I found him waiting by the parking lot. "Rachel," he said, "do you have dinner plans?" I froze. My first instinct was no. Shut it down. Protect yourself. Don't risk it. But then I looked at him, really looked. There was no arrogance, no hidden agenda, just kindness. And I thought, maybe I can give myself permission to enjoy a meal. So I said yes. That dinner was simple. A little diner off Main Street. He ordered meatloaf. I ordered chicken and mashed potatoes. We talked for hours. About books, about family, about faith, about the lessons life beats into you when you're not looking. And for the first time in years, I laughed. Really laughed, and oh. Ladies, I can't tell you how good it felt to laugh without bitterness on my tongue. Of course, the road wasn't smooth. After that night, I panicked. I pulled back, voided him at the market, told myself, don't be a fool, Rachel. Don't risk getting hurt again, because that's what betrayal does. Teaches you to fear joy, to distrust happiness, to second-guess every good thing. But Daniel, he didn't push. He just waited, patient, steady, gentle as ever. And little by little, I let him back in. There was one moment that changed everything. I was closing the bakery late one night when I saw him outside, holding a small box. He handed it to me. Inside was a set of measuring spoons, old, polished, clearly used. "These belong to my wife," he said softly. "She loved to bake too. I think she'd like you to have them." Ladies, I nearly broke right there in the doorway, because that wasn't just a gift. That was trust. That was saying, I see you. I honor you. I want you to carry something sacred of mine. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't Michael. This wasn't betrayal waiting to happen. This was something real, something safe, something healing. But here's the twist. Not everyone was happy for me. Word got around. People whispered again. Rachel moved on too fast. She can't be trusted. Remember what happened with Michael? And, yes, you guessed it, Karen found out. One Sunday morning, I walked into the diner with Daniel, and there she was, sitting 2 booths down, her eyes narrowed. Her lips curled into that same smug smirk. She leaned toward her friend and whispered something, loud enough for me to hear. Guess she finally found someone desperate enough? It stung. The old wound split open for a second, but then Daniel reached across the table, placed his hand over mine, and looked me in the eye. "You don't owe anyone your story," he said. "Not her, not them. Just live, Rachel. Just live." And in that moment, I realized I didn't care about her whispers anymore, because I had already risen. And now I was learning how to love again. So, ladies, let me leave you with this truth. Love after betrayal is possible. It's scary, yes. It's risky, yes. But it's also worth it, because love isn't about replacing what you lost. It's about discovering something new, something deeper, something born out of wisdom and scars by the end of that year. Daniel and I weren't just 2 broken people crossing paths at a market. We were partners, companions, 2 souls who had weathered storms and found shelter in each other. And when he asked me to marry him, not with flash or spectacle, but in the quiet of my bakery, flour on my apron, bread rising in the oven, I said yes, because this time It wasn't a dream that could be stolen. It was a life we would build. One loaf, one laugh, one day at a time. Ladies, if you're watching this right now and wondering if love is over for you, hear me clearly. It's not. You are never too old, too broken, too betrayed. Love can come again. In unexpected places, in gentle, steady ways, so don't close your heart forever. Keep it guarded, yes, but keep it open, because your Daniel might be out there too. If this part of my story touched you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever found love again after heartbreak? And of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'll share how building a marriage the second time around taught me lessons I never knew about forgiveness, strength, and real happiness. And trust me, you'll want to hear it. Ladies, love gave me a second chance. But here's the truth. Second chances don't come wrapped in perfection. They come wrapped in work, in patience, in humility. And oh, the lessons I learned the second time around. I want to share them with you. Daniel and I married quietly. No big wedding, no extravagant dress. Just us standing in the little white church I grew up in. My mama smiling with tears in her eyes, his grown children by his side, and a handful of close friends. Simple, honest, sacred. And as we exchanged vows, I felt something different from the first time I stood at an altar. With Michael, I was full of fairy tales. With Daniel, I was full of truth. Lesson 1. Real love is steady, not flashy. Daniel didn't sweep me off my feet with grand gestures. He didn't shower me with promises that sounded too sweet to be real. He showed up every day, with kindness, with patience, with a love that wasn't loud but strong. And ladies, if you've been burned before, you know how healing steady love can be. Lesson 2. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. I carried bitterness toward Michael and Karen for years. Every time I thought of them, my chest tightened. My anger boiled. But holding on to that anger, it was like drinking poison and expecting them to die. So one day I sat down and wrote them both letters. Letters I never sent. I poured out every wound, every betrayal, every ache. And then I burned those letters, just like I burned my old journal pages. And as the smoke rose, so did my freedom. Because forgiveness isn't saying what you did was okay. Saying, you no longer control me. Lesson 3. You are never too old to start again, ladies. I was 55 when Daniel and I decided to expand the bakery. Most people told me, why risk it now? Slow down. Play it safe. But wisdom had taught me something. Safe doesn't always mean alive. So with his encouragement, we rented a slightly bigger space, painted the walls ourselves, and opened Rachel's Hearth, a bakery not just for bread, but for community. And let me tell you, the women who walked through those doors, oh, they carried stories. Stories of divorce, widowhood, betrayal, loneliness. And somehow, they found comfort in my bread and my listening ear. And in serving them, I found my calling. Lesson 4. Your scars are your strength. For the longest time, I was ashamed of what happened with Michael and Karen. I thought it made me look weak, foolish, not enough. But Daniel reminded me, scars don't make you weak. They prove you survived, so I started sharing my story openly. With friends, with customers, with women who came into my bakery, broken, just like I had been. And do you know what happened? They opened up to. My pain became a bridge. My scars became a map. My survival became someone else's hope. And lesson 5. Happiness is built, not found. Daniel and I had our disagreements. We were both older, set in our ways. He liked his mornings quiet. I liked to sing while I baked. He was practical to a fault. I was still a dreamer. But instead of letting differences divide us, we learned to laugh at them, to bend, to compromise. Because love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about building something beautiful with someone imperfect. One evening, years later, I sat on the porch of our little home, Daniel beside me, the smell of fresh bread wafting from the kitchen. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and lavender. And I thought back to the night I stood on Michael's porch. Pastries scattered at my feet, my whole world crumbling. I thought back to the nights I cried myself to sleep, the mornings I almost gave up, the loneliness that nearly swallowed me whole. And I realized every bit of it had led me here to peace, to wisdom, to a love that was real. Ladies, if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: do not give up. Life may betray you. People may hurt you. You may feel like your story is over. But as long as you have breath in your lungs, there is still time for joy, for purpose, for love. Your scars, they are your teachers. Your heartbreak, it is your fertilizer, and your second chance. It may be waiting just around the corner, so let me end this chapter with a question. What second chance are you ready to give yourself? Is it love? Is it a dream? Is it simply the courage to wake up tomorrow and keep going? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. I'll share the final piece of my journey. The chapter where betrayal becomes wisdom, pain becomes purpose. And where I show you how to turn your own story into strength. Because if I can rise from the ashes, ladies, so can you, ladies? If you've stayed with me through this journey, first let me say thank you, truly, because telling my story hasn't just been about healing my own heart. It's about reaching yours. And this final chapter, this is where I leave you with the most important truth I've learned in all my 60 years of living. When I look back now, I see a trail of broken glass behind me. Betrayal, heartbreak, loss. I see the younger version of myself standing outside Michael's door with pastries falling from my hands, begging for answers. I see the nights I sat in my little kitchen, tears dripping into my bread dough, wondering if life was even worth fighting for anymore. But I also see the woman who kept going, who refused to let betrayal be the end of her story, who took her pain and kneaded it into strength, loaf after loaf, until her kitchen became her sanctuary. And ladies, that's the legacy I want to leave you. Life is not about avoiding pain. It's about transforming it. It's about using every scar, every setback, every broken piece as material to build something stronger. Michael and Karen thought they ended me, but what they really did was push me into the arms of a future I never could have imagined. Without their betrayal, I would never have built Rachel's hearth. I would never have met Daniel. I would never have learned what real love looks like. So the very thing that almost destroyed me saved me. Ladies, I know some of you watching right now are living in your own chapter of heartbreak. Maybe you're alone after a divorce. Maybe your children are grown and you feel invisible. Maybe life just hasn't turned out the way you dreamed. But hear me, your story is not over. You are not finished, and you are not too old, too broken, or too late. If I can rise at 55 and build a new life, so can you. My legacy is not my bakery, though I love it dearly. It's not even my second marriage, though Daniel gave me joy beyond measure. My legacy is this: I chose not to give up. I chose to turn betrayal into wisdom. I chose to turn pain into purpose. And if there's anything I leave behind, it's the hope that you will do the same. So let me ask you, one final time, what will you do with your pain? Will you let it bury you? Or will you let it build you? Because you, my dear sisters, have more strength in you than you realize. If this story touched your heart, if it lit even a small spark of courage inside you, I want you to do two things for me. First, write in the comments where you're watching from and tell me one lesson life has taught you. I want to hear your stories too. And second, if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Because together we're building a circle of women who refuse to give up, no matter what life throws our way. And as I close this chapter, I leave you with these words I now live by. You cannot control who breaks your heart, but you can control how you rise after. And sometimes, ladies, the rising is the most beautiful part of all. So rise, keep going, and never, ever give up.